Hi there, Keith Thursdays. Um, I'm following on from talk number 5, where we talked about of path of awareness and awakening. Um, and I want to talk about something which is very dear to my heart because I found that this is the only true way of liberation, and liberation is what we're talking about. Liberation, awareness, consciousness, and that is what I call an integrated or integral approach to awakening. And I will tell you my reasons for suggesting this pathway to you. And there are many reasons, and they are good reasons. So, let's begin. In the 1960s, there was a birth of tremendous consciousness and awakening in the USA. And that consciousness and awakening, um, specifically, I mean, of course, it was across the world, but it specifically came out of the people, the movement of the people in the USA. Their government had gone to war in Vietnam, as we all know, and everyone has his opinions about the Vietnam War. I think it was an atrocious war and an unnecessary war. But the point being is, millions, absolutely millions of USA citizens also felt that that war was unnecessary war. And they protested and they laid themselves on the line and they had battles with the police and they had a lot of protests on US campuses, on universities. And the people were rising. Not only were they rising into new forms of anti-government politics, such things as the wonderful work of some of the black activists, but there was a more, what we can say, observed or understood spiritual explosion too. I think all movements of consciousness are spiritual, and this is a very important thing to understand, that every change, every attempt at growth is a spiritual process. But the integral approach that grew out of the 1960s uh, was due to various different influences, and one of these was the Vietnam War itself. People were questioning, and for the first time ever, the United States media showed direct footage of the horrors of war. Right there on the TV, you could see people getting napalmed and whatever you call it, and burned to death as the Americans used these horrific weapons to destroy the lives of whole villages sometimes. It was a dirty, horrible war brought to the world by the mass media. But you've got to hand it to them, no matter what you think. It was the mass media of America, or rather certain individuals within that, that showed all of that. And the actual Vietnam War created this reaction to the establishment, a questioning of the establishment. And yes, there was protests around the world against the Vietnam War, but let's be fair to the American citizens. Um, they protested against a very heavy background. They could be imprisoned, they could be attacked by the police, their lives were sometimes put in tremendous danger. Now, out of this time of conflict, and here's what I want to talk about, and include this in spiritual laws again, um, conflict. So this was a time of great conflict. And um, conflict makes us uncertain. It makes us uncertain at the survival level. And later, when I talk about the chakras, we'll understand what this is. The survival level is the root chakra, and the first three chakras, which basically is the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus. So at those levels, everyone's getting shook up. At the same time, for around 40 or 50 years into America and Europe had come the translations of much wisdom from many traditions. So people were already reading Zen Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Hindu yogic masters, etc. And they were looking at shamanic societies and their religious and what we can call their spiritual roots. So, on one level, or one side, the American government was doing its thing with the big money machine, spending on military, creating another war. And on the other side, the American people were protesting avidly against this. And I would suggest it was this tension, this war, not just in Vietnam, but war internally with the people of the USA, or many of them fighting against the Vietnam War in various ways. It was this tension that created a spurt forward, a mass consciousness of awakening. Think of the music that came out in the 60s and the very early 70s during this period of Vietnam. Think of the protest songs of Bob Dylan. Think of uh, the work of the Beatles, John Lennon, and his wonderful song Imagine. Think of all of the um, Jimi Hendrix, wonderful Jimi Hendrix. Think of all the contradictions, these marvelous young artists with great creativity that also self-destructed on dangerous substances like heroin, cocaine, and other substances. The world was going through a crazy explosion of consciousness. And I've got to say, and I think we should all recognize this, that brilliant work in consciousness research, especially that part of it called human potentials, came out of the USA. If you don't understand this work, then you're in danger of, well, what I talked about, I think it was in talk 5, what I called pop spirituality. The pop spirituality is the type of spirituality that is sold to you uh, because it's sold and it makes big money. And nothing against big money; it's good, useful for everybody. But commercialism and the oversell of certain ideas, especially the law of attraction, I would posit is causing a tremendous problem in the real spiritual movement forward, as is the wholesale selling of things like ascended masters, angelic realms, etc. All of these works, if you know your history, especially of Western esoteric movements, you'll understand where the roots of all those thoughts come from. At the very beginning, they are from such groups as the Rosicrucians, going back 300 years. They are also of the work of some of the writers in France, etc., Levi and others, connected to white magic. There are white magic orders like the Golden Dawn, etc. And then there is the wonderfully controversial Madame Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society. Out of that emerged Alice Bailey and Rudolf Steiner and his anthroposophy, with its roots actually very clearly connected to theosophy. So these are the ones that talked, especially Madame Blavatsky. She was the one that created the Ascended Masters. The Theosophical Society is the roots of the Ascended Masters. And I have read those books from the 1870s and stuff from right up to 1930s from the Theosophical Society. And all this new stuff that's being channeled is being regurgitated from those roots. Now, I'm not saying that's deliberately done and that these people are doing it just to make money. But what I am saying is that these ideas are not as new as people think. And unless you know the history of our spiritual ideas and the growth of spiritual ideas in the West, then you're going to get very drawn into these things without question. Okay, so where am I going with this? Well, integrated awareness came from a combination of Eastern thought. The Theosophical Society was based in India. The great and another controversial person, the great and very wise, some would say, and awakened, Krishnamurti, Yida Krishnamurti, came through that system of theosophical discovery, theosophical development, and it was Charles Leadbetter who took him off the beach in India, saw his auric field, took him in as a young 14 or 15-year-old boy to the society, trained him, worked with his meditation and his thought processes, and they called him the coming avatar, the world teacher, the concept of the world teacher. Now later this concept was made into other systems, uh, and these systems are highly plausible. But in all honesty, I think right from the beginning of the Theosophical Society, there was a high degree of total imagination used here. And I'm going to say that because for years I haven't. A lot, read those books, and Madame Blavatsky was trying to be someone in the spiritual world and became that. But highly dubious and questionable theories were put into those spiritual books. So therefore, the New Age channels and teachers that are bringing this ascended master stuff out at the present moment are following that lineage from Blavatsky down to the present moment. And I would suggest they are presenting escapist New Age teachings, which are not helping you one bit. So what's the difference between escapist, what I call space cadet spirituality, and true integral development? Okay, well, here's the answer. True integral development is based along sound understanding of the different levels or the different sides of the human personality. It understands that we have a personality, that we have an ego, so-called, and that we have a Western consciousness, at least most of the people listening to this will have. And that consciousness is based on certain procedures, certain cognitive issues, certain cognitive developments, the development of our Western civilizations. And what happens is that we have become somewhat schizophrenic and afraid of our mind. And we take this, what I call space cadet information, and begin to throw away our logic. It's like we are ashamed of our Westernness. We're ashamed of the West because we were the imperial forces that went around the world, etc., etc. But I would say, stop being ashamed of being Western. You've only been Western in a few lifetimes anyway. And the Western contribution to spirituality is tremendous. The teachings of the Middle East, and Christianity came out of the Middle East, for example, but the profound, deep, esoteric meaning of Jesus' teaching and the new message which he brought was to bring the kingdom of heaven down to earth. And out of that, amazing, absolutely wonderful personalities in our history have contributed so much to us. People like Mother Teresa of Calcutta, people like Martin Luther King Jr., and they are just two to speak of. Then there are others. There are mystics that combine East and Western ideas within an esoteric Christian setting, and they have added a new approach to spirituality, an active approach that includes our personalities. So, I studied deeply some of the work that came out of Alice Bailey's work, and there's a psychology of the spirit which is extremely useful. But one also gets the feeling that Alice Bailey was molded. Well, we know she was molded in the theosophical mode, and there's a little bit too much philosophy in there. But some of her ideas about the human psyche, about the spiritual side of our psychology, are tremendous, and they allow us to understand the many levels of our spiritual self. One of the greatest dangers now in this new age. Okay, I go off a little on a tangent here because I want to insert this bit here. I believe that there was an Atlantis and Lemuria. Civilizations that disappeared off our Earth, who knows, 500,000 years ago. I also believe we've had high technological levels in the past. Now, people go crazy on Atlantis often and Lemuria and the Egyptian pyramids, etc., about the spirituality. I have a slightly different take on this, and that is that at those times we had a great amount of technological knowledge. We had a great amount of knowledge of how to use the mind, projecting mind power, how to use the spirit world, how to communicate with the spirit world, and probably telepathically how to communicate with most life forms, and some of those life forms possibly not even on this planet. And all of our ancient traditions, the shamanic traditions, talk of this right across this planet. Doesn't matter whether they're Aztec or Incan, some African tribes, old tribes in Ethiopia, Mongolia, hidden tribes of China and Tibet, not necessarily the mainstream Tibetan Buddhists, but the tribes, the old shamanic beliefs in Tibet, all talk about telepathic connections and maybe physical connections and physical communications with intelligences from beyond our planet. So I believe that is true. But I think what is important to understand is that the whole sequence of civilization of Lemuria and Atlantis disappeared. There's very little physical evidence of it, is there? It seems to be just a mass consciousness myth. But the interesting thing is a mass consciousness myth in so many different places and was found in so many different places before our modern era, before the time of the internet and mass communication. So these ideas weren't relayed by TV or telephone even or any other electronic means. They are cultural ideas that are being taught from parents to children right through time. So I believe there's something real in this. But the important thing is to understand we destroyed ourselves. We destroyed ourselves because of our egos. Now, here we have a problem. How do we define the ego from spirituality? Many people who are playing spiritual on the spiritual path and playing at being spiritual are developing their egos, and they are going along and listening to these different what I call off-planet philosophies, and they are losing their connection to the doctrine of the heart, the pure, true intuition of themselves, and the doctrine of the mind, how we, especially in the West of recent, not always in the West, but recently, in the last 1,000 years, have developed the mind. And they throw all that away. They throw away their own intelligence, their own hard-worked intelligence, worked at through many lifetimes, and they throw away their heart feelings, and all because, and this is what you really must understand, all because they have no true inner spiritual self-confidence. Now, did you get that? They have no true inner spiritual self-confidence, and they have been programmed and brainwashed to feel that our Western society doesn't have its own spirituality. And they have been programmed to be ashamed of our history and ashamed of who we are. And therefore we leave our lovely European countries, and we go to Machu Picchu, and we go to Mexico, and we go to Mount Shasta in California, and we go all over the place looking for where the power of the spirit is higher than it is in Europe. Of course, I'm mainly talking to a European audience here. Now, I would suggest that is a big mistake, and it takes you away from what is truly important, which is to develop the integration of this thing we call your personality, your soul, and your spirit. Like body, mind, spirit. Body can be seen as the storage of emotion. Mind can be seen as the storage of mental phenomena and the creation of mental phenomena. And spirit can be seen as the chi plus the intelligence of the cosmos. as one thing, coming into the system through various points on your body. The true way of integral development is not to run around like a headless chicken, trying to find the next channel, the next medium, the next spiritual message, the next savior to save you. It is, as Monty Python team once said, save yourself. It is the philosophy, and the wonderfully positive philosophy, of believing that God consciousness is within you. That there's nothing more beautiful than the spirit of a human being. There's nothing more spiritual or advanced than the spirit of a human being. Now, if you think about the ideas being pushed out now about the ascended masters, yeah, it's wonderful. You know, we can bow down to Sananda, we can bow down to all of these things. But what are they? I do believe in awakened beings. However, what are they? Yes, they're humans, awakened. What are we? Humans. Right. Now, the greatest of the great spiritual teachers talked about themselves being awake. They talked about demons attacking them, and they talked about heavenly forces and demonic forces, and all of these, I would suggest, are within our psyche. Now, that's an interesting perspective, because if we come back into the psyche and say, every spiritual experience I have, every angel I see, every meditation where I see Jesus or Kuan Yin or whatever else is just my own inner experience of how I experience the universe. Why is it you think that when Buddhists meditate they see Buddhas, and that when Hindus meditate they get messages from Shiva or others, Krishna, etc. Why? Good question. Think about it. And why, when people are brought up in, like I was, Roman Catholic or other Christian background, when they go first into deep meditation, they see, yes, you've got it, Jesus Christ, the Holy Mother Mary, etc. Why? Because their mind is already conditioned to receive spiritual knowledge or spiritual ideas in that particular way. When we understand this, we'll understand what the Buddha said. The mind makes everything. Now, when you really grasp hold of what I'm saying here, your mind transcends the need then for external outside help. You don't need a whole bunch of ascended masters. You don't need to speak to angels every day. Well, let's face it, angels don't come and battle with all the things we battle here. We are the ones, we are the spirits that deal with this extremely difficult physical life. We are the heroes. And yet we are not confident in our spirituality, so we are like the headless chicken running around blind. Yet if you understand the integration of these three simple things, personality or body, mind, and higher mind, of course, which is cosmic, and thirdly, the spirit, the human spirit. If you understand that those three levels, simplified, are one thing, but if we are stuck in our lower concepts of who I am, our personality and its needs, which is often quoted as the ego, if we are stuck in the ego, then what we often do is we get attached to spiritual teachings. We then stay in the ego or personality, and we find the spiritual teachings which fit into our personality and don't rock the personality so much. So we get all these people wanting spiritual enlightenment. What they want, really, is to believe in spiritual enlightenment without the pure spiritual courage to do what they must do to find that enlightenment. And what we must do is transcend all programs, transcend all training, transcend all ideas that have been externally put into our heads and emotions. We need to go beyond these things. We need to think and act and choose pathways of life which are based on courage, on vision. Now, this vision, I would suggest, comes from the deepest level of your spirit, and your spirit doesn't bow to angels, and your spirit doesn't bow to ascended masters. Your spirit only worships the God consciousness or the universal consciousness. Everything else your spirit understands is just like it. It's pure spiritual consciousness from the One. Your spirit doesn't bow to anything. Your spirit is part of God, if you want to use that term. And it's a non-separated part of God, slightly differentiated, you can say. But it is so close, you might as well say it is one with God. Now, to get that understanding of a deep connection to God or cosmic forces will change your life. I've had that. I had that inflow of stuff, spiritual stuff, when I was 14 years old. I've had other experiences, 3 or 4 extremely deep awakenings in my life, where I saw in a flash the whole beauty of life and the whole classical mess of human ideas, especially spiritual ideas, of what life is. And I saw also the dangers inherent in our history, our spiritual history, and our religious history. And what do I mean by dangers? Well, I would put it this way, and you can think about this. We've exploded the earth once before because of spiritual wars. The worst war you could ever imagine are 2 religious or groups that think they're spiritual fighting out across the planet to control the spiritual training of the human race. Now, those wars you don't want to see on this planet again. Now, you might say, well, how do you know this, kid? I do. I've seen it. I know it. I've seen it because I was not content when I trained as a medium. I trained with Gordon Higginson. I trained at Stansted Hall. I trained with other mediums there at the time, and so did Fiona. And then we moved out to England, to Iceland, and other places. I trained with all those people, but I asked questions. I saw trance mediums. I have done channeling myself over 15 years. I channel Lu Chi. Wonderful wise talks. I still have over 40 tapes, 60 to 90-minute talks that I sold for a while in Sweden, etc. And they are wonderful tapes. Right. Now, I finished recording those tapes in 1998, and I've listened to them recently, and they are wonderful. But I can see what's there. And this is very important, because many people don't talk about this. What is there is a spiritual input. There is definitely a spiritual force, a being, a wise being that I feel and sense, who is Lu Chi. Even though I go into quite a deep trance, of course, Lu Chi must use my brain, must use the words that I have, must use my physical mechanism. So as soon as that process begins to happen, then some of my personality, my me self, is automatically transmitted, no matter how unconscious or in trance I am, is transmitted into those teachings. And it cannot be avoided. So when people say they are pure channel for Sananda, bullshit. They're human beings. And their mouth and their brain and their nervous system is being used by, if we're lucky, an enlightened spirit. If we're not lucky, it's just the unconscious wish to be someone coming through. There's no spiritual energy there at all. Now, think about that. I am very truthful, and some people hate this, but I want you to liberate yourself so you find an integrated approach to developing your own body, mind, and spirit. All I'm saying is you don't need these channels. You don't need spirits, although sometimes it's lovely to talk to them, and being a medium, especially the most important mediumship, which is proving to someone the existence of a loved one who's now moved over. This is very valuable mediumistic work, and it is the most valuable. I think everything else, from the trance stuff to deep trance, where you're supposed to have Moses and Jesus and Hitler coming through and all this other stuff, well, it's circus. It's been going on. Read about the history of spiritualism and the controversies. Wake up. Do you really need someone who's sitting there? Welcome, my friend. I am Jibala. Jibala. I have lived many lifetimes in ancient Egypt. I bring to you words of peace and wisdom. Take care of the earth. Take care of the dolphins. Remember, you are one with the planet. Yes, if we don't know that, come on. No, come on. Don't be religious in your search. Don't think you have to be religiously bow to people that say that they are wise channels, or they're doing this or doing that. Come on, believe in yourself. Open to your own mind. Integrate your own intelligence. You do not need to fall into that old stuff again. That stuff, come on, I was a Roman Catholic, they give me this, There's all those Christians waiting for the coming of Christ, and they're sorting out where those that have been correct will go to heaven, the others will go to hell. It's the same stuff. It's been sold to us for over millions of years. Millions of years? Yeah, because we've had civilizations that have disappeared. But we don't need to buy into that. In fact, you don't find spiritual enlightenment that way, because you're entering the mental circus of spiritual ideas, which is a thought band, a thought collectivity, a thought energy. Our thoughts create energies in our own energy field, and we have collective energy fields, and these energies go out and they join. And when something is published in a book or TV, it creates more thought waves, and that creates wonderful, powerful mental fields. Now you meditate, you connect to those mental fields when you see Sananda or Jesus or Mary, and you think that you really have seen Jesus, Sananda or Mary, and all you're doing is telepathically connecting with the thought field. Now there's something to think about. Now, do you want to be fooled by these human projections, or do you want to go deeper beyond that into pure self-awareness, into pure awakening of consciousness in your own third eye, in your own crown chakra, in your own mind, your own heart, and in your life? Now, don't get me wrong. I am not saying that the spiritual teachings of the past haven't brought us great advancements, because they have. But they've also brought us great pain. They've also brought us vicious wars. And it's no good going and saying who was the worst, who caused the worst wars. Was it the Christians invading the Muslim lands? Was it the Muslims invading the Christian lands? That's meaningless stuff, really. What has brought us the wars is the dogmatic approach, whether it be Christian, Muslim, Hindu, not so much Buddhist, because they have certain safeguards against this, but especially the prophetic religions, which are from the prophets, which came, the first one being Judaism, the second one being Christianity, and the third one being the Islamic faith. But they are three branches of one faith, one tree. And because it is spoken by prophets, then it is the word of God. And then what you have is the Jewish religion with one set of rules, and the Christian with another, and the Islamic with another. And yet if you go deep into the Jewish tradition through the Kabbalah, the more hidden side, you find it's based on compassion and love. And if you listen to the wonderful Islamic poets and the Sufi tradition and see their art, and you feel that the heart of their teaching, you'll know it's divine inspiration. And if you go into the mystical Christian, especially those ones which were persecuted and destroyed by the government of Christianity, i.e. the Catholic Church, you'll find the same processing. But you see, and here's the catch, and here's the key, to understand God through the Muslim faith, you have to go into the heart of what the Prophet was saying. If you want to understand Christianity, you have to go into the heart and mind of Jesus. You have to become one with his thoughts, his teaching. And that's the same for any teaching. I have found through a deep application and understanding of normal psychology to work on my psychological problems that come from my family, my social background, my national background, etc. And my karma, you could say. By working on that level, which is personality level psychology. By working with soul psychology, which looks at the connection between a developed personality, like a shined diamond, and the soul. And then at a higher level, the transcendental techniques, which shows how the spirit impregnates the soul and personality with the light, the cosmic light of God. When you understand that, you don't need channels, and you don't need trance mediums, and you don't need to listen to anyone else. You need to find because you know you have it. You need to find the light within, the pure light of consciousness. And there are serious teachers that understand this, each with a different avenue, a different way of seeing this. All you have to do is understand that they have found it, and you can't. You don't have to follow everything they say, but you have to understand that they are true waypointers. They are not bullshitting you with some hyped up philosophy, but they are showing to you what they have found. You say, I have found something. I have found deep inner peace and deep inner levels of awareness. And I look at people who sometimes say that they are teachers, and I don't see that. I see something else, and I'll let you work that out. So, my friends, I am telling you that everything you need is within you. The light of consciousness is within you. I just want to show you one little book. Well, it's not so little, actually. It's from my bookshelf. This is a lovely and very deep book. Wait to see if I can get it. It's fantastic, and this is by A.H. Almas, and I have studied and worked with this system. I've not been to his workshops, I've just studied from his books, and why pay for a workshop when I can meditate on the books? Brilliant. Another person that I will tell you about is one of my wonderful heroes. I love her very much. Never met her. I love her because, well, when I first found the books, it sung to my heart, and she was teaching as I and Fiona were teaching. But I have to say, she was much more disciplined than me, and had totally organized her system of teaching at that point in time. I'm more disciplined now, but then I wasn't. And that's Caroline Mays, and I often post YouTube stuff of her on my Facebook, and I talk about her I will talk about it in these videos. Yet these are real teachers. These are teachers that understand the levels of consciousness within the personality. They're not taking you off planet. They're not zooming you off to ascension. You know, we will ascend and leave everyone else to rot on the sinking ship type of attitude. We are the family human, the human family. And we are here to save our species, to transcend the religions of the past, yes, but not to throw it all away, to keep the gems. And we are here to we are here to transcend our own limitations within our own thinking and personality, so that our personality transforms with the light of the Spirit. But I would posit that true integral psychology is the way forward. True integral spiritual practice which understands the personality. If you don't understand your personality, that's the first step. Everything you follow will be connected to what your personality wants to follow. And to put it simply, your personality doesn't know. So you have to understand the shadow side, or as I said, Eckhart Tolle's pain, body. You have to understand how that skews. It makes you look at things in the wrong direction, and you lose contact with the truth. That truth is within you. Trust it. Find it. But be very careful on the path of liberation that you don't end up like a true devotee. We do not need to bow to gurus. We do not need to bow to the archangels. We do not need to bow to anything. You have to have respect for life and the spirit of life, which is behind everything. And as the Buddha once said, everything we see is an illusion of the mind. If you remember that, you go beyond all concepts to an inner stillness in the moment. An inner stillness which will awaken the true intuition of the heart mind, the true intelligence of the mind heart, because they are combined then. They become one thing. They speak as one, as the two sides of yin and yang can speak as one. Okay, this has taken the talk further and deeper. Tremendous amount of material, so don't make it like making notes or things like that. Just meditate on some of the stuff I've laid on the table here. You don't have to eat all of this food that I've given, all of these ideas. Ding, ding, ding. You don't have to do that. Just take a few key ideas here, ones that feel important to you, and just meditate. And by meditate, I mean play them in your mind, question them, question everything they say, question everything everyone says, especially your own mind. There is another secret. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this. Until next time. Yes, this is Talk 6, and I will be on the YouTube in the next 4 or 5 days with Talk 7. Take care of yourselves. Bye.